Hello. This time I want to talk about the future of progress and prosperity. I believe that there are going to be another 2 decades of increased productivity, increased prosperity around the world on average. Doesn't mean everywhere, doesn't mean every person, but taken as a whole, the next 2 decades, at least maybe 25 years, will probably be a long boom. There are a number of different reasons that are driving this, and I want to enumerate them. There's probably about 7 one-time events on this planet that are coming together to drive this long-term prosperity. This applies to China especially, but also to the entire world, including Africa, South America, the rest of Asia, and North America. On average, we will see degrees of middle-class prosperity like we have not seen before. In the same ways that the last 20 years have been an economic and prosperity boom around the globe, we're going to have another 20 years like that. Because much of the prosperity that we've had so far has come from one-time events in the past, some economists were not really sure that we could do this again. Those one-time events in the past include automation through cheap energy. The fact that we could automate our farming with machines enabled us to have this great leap forward that we could not do just with our own power. That only happens one time in the planet. There was a large-scale movement of women into the commercial workforce that happens only one time. So I think that the next 25 years will see about 6 other one-time events that will contribute to this long-term prosperity. One of the 7, not one of the 6, one of the 7 trends is a continuation of that earlier one-time events trend. In other words, a major cause of the prosperity in the next 25 years will be the continuation of the prosperity in the last 25 years, and that is the continuation of urbanization. The fact that, for the most part, we can say that there will be total urbanization of the planet. By far, the majority, maybe 85%, 90% of the people on the planet will be living in urban areas. This urbanization is a huge multiplier and enabler of many of the other trends that I will be talking about. But the prospect of having the majority of the planet's inhabitants living in urban areas means that the many trends in the past 25 years will continue. And part of the trend is sort of the way in which you use automation, the way in which things that were done formerly by hand will continue to be done by machines of some sort. They don't have to be smart machines. It can be something like a tractor. They can be something like a delivery on a truck. These are old technologies. These are not new technologies. But these old ones will continue. So we will continue to pave roads. We will continue to lay electricity into villages that don't have it. We will continue to do all the things that we have been doing, and we will continue to do those. And that will, again, contribute to this great progression, I would call it, the great progression of the next 25 years, the great period of progress. And at one level, that doesn't look anything different. It's just a continuation of what we're already doing. But that continuation actually is the bedrock, the foundation for these other 6 trends to happen. Unless we do them, we can't do these other things. Unless we continue this urbanization, this modernization of bringing modern technology to the farm, of bringing electricity and healthcare to every village. Unless we continue that, we really can't do these other things. So all these high post industrial things require that industrialization occurs, and that's going to be the main driver of these other 6 trends, is the continuation of the urbanization that we have already witnessed until we have total urbanization. So that's the first trend, total urbanization. The second trend is the idea of universal connectivity. The fact that we have also been involved in bringing every adult, human adult on the planet, to some degree of connectivity with potentially every other adult. So while most people are not going to connect with all 7, 8 billion people on the planet, you could potentially connect with them if you wanted to. You could, no matter where you live, in theory, have an email, a WeChat connection, and actually have a conversation or exchange and communication in some ways. And it's not just with other people, of course. What we're connected to is this world library, all the information in the world, the YouTubes, the Wikipedias, and also all the machines of the world that we can connect to, all the AIs, to also individual machines, and that the machines themselves are connected to all the other machines. So this universal connectivity is very, very big. It means the fact that we have created this very large, complex, this web of connectivity and communication around the globe. So that, again, that everybody alive could potentially communicate with every other person in any machine that exists. And that all those other machines could communicate with each other, creating kind of this layer, this membrane of connectivity around the planet. That connectivity can also transmit data from sensors around the globe, whether there be weather sensors, moisture sensors, cameras looking at floods, whatever it is. That kind of universal sensorium is part of this universal connectivity, in the sense that it's not just connectivity, we're also sensing everything. And that again, that cloak of connectivity is very, very important. And in the human realm, of course, this ability to connect with all the other humans on the planet in real time is aided by things like universal translation software, which will allow anybody in some remote area, Timbuktu, who may speak Arabic or some other tribal language, to communicate with somebody who lives in China. That is part of this universal connectivity. And what this does is this unleashes the great pent-up resource of billions of people, and we make one global economy where anybody anywhere can participate in this global economy, meaning they can share their genius, they can share their talent, they can share their resources, they can share their drive, their creativity, and be part of the same global economy that everybody else is, that you and I are part of. And that's potentially transformative state where we are harnessing the creativity and the work and the ambition of everybody alive in the numbers of the billions that we had never even been able to consider before. So that's a huge, huge step. And of course, there will be lots of downsides to that connectivity. We already know about the dangers of having everybody connected, but there's the larger danger of having a kind of a group mind, where it gets very kind of difficult to have your own idea because there are 7 billion people who have the same idea as you, and there's a pressure to go along with that. And so there will be issues with this universal connectivity, but at the same time, I believe that there will be huge benefits in having everybody potentially connected together. And one of the things I would expect out of this is new levels of collaboration, where because of universal connectivity, we can collaborate at a scale on this planet that we've never been able to collaborate before. That we could have 1 million, 2 million, 10 million people working together in real time, working on a project, making a bridge, designing a new kind of airplane, whatever it might be, in a way that you could not do if you lived near each other. You just can't. It's very hard to get 1 million people together to work on something, but you can do it remotely, and we couldn't do it remotely until we have this new technologies. But these new technologies will allow us to partner with 1 million other people in working on something together. And that partnership and those collaboration tools include things like how do we move credit through it? How do we pay people and keep track of what they do? How do we archive, keep track of changes? All of the mundane issues of work and logistics need to be assisted by new tools that have yet to be invented. But they all rest on the fact that we will have that potential pool of 7 to 8 billion people connected anytime they want, all the time they want, anywhere in the world. And that universal connectivity is a huge foundation for economic progress. But it's also, as we come to understand, a huge step forward in cultural progress as well, in terms of if you have billions of people, all the people on the planet connected together, you potentially can communicate to them, and they can collaborate on things other than just work. They can collaborate on political movements. They can collaborate on efforts to do something good for the collective good. So it is also a huge potential cultural force as well. So that's the second driver, which is universal connectivity. The third driver is ubiquitous AI, ubiquitous artificial intelligence. This is something that I've talked about a lot, and there's a lot of discussion, many people talking about what happens when we have AI all the time, everywhere. And the thing that I would like to try to clarify is that these are AIs, these are plural. There are many different kinds of AIs, many different types. They have many different types of thinking. They'll be used for many different things. And it's not just a single AI, it's many AIs. And each of them will have their own characteristics and properties, their own pluses and minuses. But the idea is that they generally will be available everywhere in the world. Of course, they'll be uneven in some respects. The newest stuff may not be everywhere. But that, like electricity, has become a commodity everywhere in the world, where you can buy as much electricity as you want. Artificial intelligence, to some degree, will also become a commodity like that will be available. You can buy as much as you want. You don't have to just make it yourself. You can purchase it like you would purchase electricity or power. And that, like power, it's a new kind of power that can be used and applied in thousands, if not millions, of different ways. And so we want to think of this as a commodity, as a resource. And certainly there's going to be people who are working on very advanced forms of it that may have these issues about biases, moral judgments, human values, that we want to have them installed. But for the most part, a lot of these AIs, a lot of this power is going to be boring, very pragmatic, very much a commodity, just something like electricity, which is there and available to power our dreams. And having AI basically is one way to manufacture or to increase or to leverage intelligence and minds. So a very common problem for growing businesses or even growing societies is to have more people, more minds at work, more minds contributing. And AI offers that ability, just like what we got from artificial power was the ability to amplify our muscles or even transcend our muscles so we can make things that were higher than what our own muscles could do. And basically it allowed anybody to hire muscle power to do things, to make cotton, to make a road, to make a railway, to make a building. And we were kind of amplifying our muscles. Now we're going to amplify our minds, which we find actually more valuable. And so anybody, anywhere will be able to basically purchase some of that power to assist whatever their ambition is, whether it's a small business or big business, government. We will now have access to these artificial thinking machines that can do things for us that we either don't want to do, can't do, or haven't even dreamed of doing. And that power, again, is going to be cheap for the most part. There will always be new versions that will be expensive, but over time, it'll become a cheap commodity. And that cheap commodity, like oil and artificial power in the role of the Industrial Revolution, automating many, many tasks and contributing to our long-term prosperity, this new power will also generate long-term prosperity by automating many other things that are in our lives. Not just physical things like oil did, and electricity, but intellectual things, white-collar work, things that we wish we could have someone smarter than us or someone like us working on 24 hours a day. So this general driver of ubiquitous AI is not going to come overnight. It'll keep coming little bit by little bit over the years. Over the next 25 years, we'll continue to add things, and it'll go beyond 25 years. But what I'm saying is that's not an overnight thing where we switch it on. This is something going to be incrementally improving, where the price of it will continue to go down, and the power and choices, the possibilities will continue to go up. But overall, this one, like automation, is an enabling technology. As we have more and more AI and ubiquitous and cheap AI, it actually enables the other drivers that we're talking about. So it's a technology that, one, will benefit those who use it directly, and then two, benefit many people a second time indirectly. In other words, for instance, AI can help us improve computers, improve medicine. So medicine and biological things is another driver, and that actually is being improved by cheap AIs. So there's a second order effect which amplifies throughout the society. So that is the third driver after total urbanization, universal connectivity. Then there's ubiquitous artificial intelligence. The fourth driver is sustainable energy. Sustainable energy, as I was just talking about, energy itself and the automation of energy was behind the rise of the industrial age and behind everything that we see around us today. The fact that we could access cheap energy and do things beyond what our own muscles could do, or animal muscles. And that was a huge thing that enabled us to erect these incredible cities and to urbanize. But the cost of that was it's a one-time event. We were basically burning limited fossil fuels, limited fuels. However much there are, and we don't actually know how much, we do know that they're limited, and we're burning them so that you can only burn them once. And where we're going now with the climate change has kind of forced us to accelerate this idea that we don't want to burn carbon as the basis of our civilization. We want to do many other things that aren't one time. So we have wind and solar and nuclear to some extent, which is not a one-time event, where we can generate ongoing energy on a ongoing sustainable basis. And I include nuclear in that because while obviously uranium and other materials are themselves limited, so far in the way that we're using them, they're essentially as if they're unlimited. There are costs to dealing with this, costs to dealing with the spent fuels, costs to dealing with the waste that truly are limited. But in principle, solar, wind, and nuclear promise us and in the future perhaps fusion energy, promise us a way to make energy that's not one time and that is far more sustainable for the planet. And it's not just the fact that it's greener, it's the fact that we are going to continue to use more and more energy. And that energy needs to be continued to drop in price, and it needs to also not to heat the earth, which is what burning carbon does. So learning to decarbonize our energy system is very, very powerful. And some people have calculated that just the simple step of not burning carbon inefficiently in the many furnaces, gasoline, internal combustion machines that we have, which are all hugely inefficient, that by turning to electronic motors, electronic heat pumps, relying on electrons instead of oxidation, that we could even cut the amount of energy we use by half, because it's so much more efficient just doing the same things we're doing, the same energy uses, but not using burning for the fuel, but using electrons. We can actually save half of the energy that we're using. So the reasons, or I should say the benefits from going with a more sustainable energy, clean energy, is the fact that we have access to more of it, and more people have access to it, and it becomes, again, what it should be, which is a commodity that enables progress for all the people of the world. And so one of the maybe upsides, if you want to think about it, this current climate crisis is that we will figure out how to do that. We can figure out how to do that. We're not going to solve the climate problem, but we can mitigate it. And one of the ways we can mitigate it is by moving to sustainable energy systems. And that has the added advantage of actually enabling economic growth. So I would say that one of the 4 driving principles of this new great progression is the fact that we are going to be taking a sustainable energy approach. The 5th pillar is accelerated innovation. And accelerated innovation means the fact that one of the things that universal connectivity gives us is a way in which to speed our learning. And it turns out that the high-tech companies and some other technological companies kind of learned early on that innovation was the real key to their economic success. And what's happening is that the idea of innovation, of learning how to innovate, truly innovate and make things new and better, has spread from science, a small group of scientists who learned how to do this with the scientific method, and it spread to some tech companies that learned how to do this to make money. And now it's starting to spread beyond it, so that we have all companies and even governments understanding that the real key to their progress, the key to their prosperity, was to become innovative. And innovation has a cost. All right, there's a cost, an investment, an upfront, a price that you have to pay to innovate, and that's often something that doesn't pay off immediately. It's a longer term return. So you have to be a little more patient to do it. But when we learn to do it, when we learn to be a little patient, when we learn to take that longer term view, the returns are huge. There is probably nothing in society that has returned more dollars per dollars invested as basic R&D science research, even though almost most of the research is done is failure. It doesn't work. Ideas that don't work at all. They turn out to be dead on arrival. They turn out to not work. They turn out to be stupid ideas. They turn out to, in some ways, be failures. But the successes are so successful that they are worth the price. And secondly, they often take many years to prove themselves, to shake out the stuff that doesn't work. And so if you judge science and science research and innovation by the early returns, it will never make any sense at all because most of those early returns are failures. But if you take a longer view, there's nothing that has paid back society more than the dollars that we've spent on basic science and research and innovation. And so as everybody kind of understands this, we're now spreading that culture of innovation, the principles of innovation, and we're also using the tools that we just talked about, artificial intelligence, universal connectivity, to accelerate that innovation. And what it looks like we're headed to is a place where innovation continues to spread, and we accelerate the innovation, and it becomes a norm for most businesses, not just high-tech businesses. It becomes a norm for most institutions. It becomes a norm for most governments, where they understand that they have to invest into and play the game and be patient for that innovation. Innovation has a cost. It's not something, it's free, but we're understanding that the cost is worthwhile. And secondly, we are now trying to accelerate that with technologies. And so this accelerated technology culture is something that we're going to see more of in the next 25 years. It won't be universal, but it'll be more common than it was. It'll seep out of just the high tech and go into other technologies who will understand the value of becoming innovative and be willing to pay the cost of innovation, to come out of Silicon Valley and out of Shenzhen and go into other regions of the world. And they too will understand that they have to invest into that infrastructure of innovation. And that acceleration will really make it happen faster. And it'll be self-accelerating. And I think that some of the current technologies like YouTube have a huge influence or a huge accelerant on this innovation because they speed up the learning circuit, they speed up the feedback loops, they speed up the ways in which someone figures that something out and is disseminated through universal connectivity, and everybody sees it and they can make a better idea and send it back. And so that loop is shorter and shorter, and we accelerate learning, we accelerate innovation, and that is a huge driver of prosperity in the next 25 years. So the sixth driver is bioengineering, the biology, the neobiological future. So biology is much more difficult to do than digital. It's much more complicated. It's much slower. And we have been, as humans, talking about the biological revolution for many, many decades, and it has yet to come. I don't think it will be complete or have arrived in the next 25 years, but we will make slow progress in that direction, and that slow progress will be helpful. So that bioengineering future is a very wide field. It includes things like continuing to have our genes sequenced, and right now there seems to have not been much benefit to have your gene sequenced, but in 25 years there will be absolutely arguably benefits from having your gene sequenced, from getting personalized therapies to avoiding certain diseases entirely. And it's not just our own health, which will benefit, but even things like new kinds of food, lab-grown meat, new kinds of meat, golden rice, nutritional foods, hyper-nutritional foods, and to the point of even things like personalized medicines, personalized therapies through the quantified self and other means where we actually really aim to engineer wellness to your particular body and mind. So it's a very, very broad thing, but it's very, very complicated. It's going to move very slowly, but it will move, and every move in that direction is a benefit to us. It will increase longevity. It will increase the length of our wellness state. So we're not just old and sick, but we're old and healthy. And it'll increase the options we have while we're well, from the things that we eat to what we want to do, changing how we can grow food for everybody, how we can have good food without killing all the living creatures on the planet, how we can have good food that is accessible to everybody, and good food for every person and their needs. So the bioengineering revolution is a very broad one that is not going to be complete and maybe hardly even feel like it started in 25 years. But again, its consequences are so large that even small steps in that direction will have huge benefits for us. And this revolution, the bioengineering revolution, is going to be powered by things like ubiquitous AI. It's going to be powered by accelerated innovation. And it's going to be powered by total urbanization. And so, among the many things we can imagine are things like AI, doctor AIs to help those who don't have access to a doctor. So that's the sixth one. The seventh trend is the generational handoff. And the generational handoff means that the baby boom generation, which I am a part of, will have died and retired and be redundant. And in 25 years, there'll be another generation at the helm of power. And they will be doing things differently. And that's good news, because I think a kind of a generational view or civilizational view of generations, and I think every generation has its own kind of personality, and sometimes it's in reaction to the previous one. And if history is any kind of a guide, the generation after a generation like the boomers will often be very civic-minded and a builder generation. And I think that's what the world needs right now, and I think that would also be really good for the Great Progression, is to have a generation that sees its identity, who has a natural tendency to want to build civic infrastructure. And I think we're at that moment where in the next 25 years, as boomers die off, the millennials will have a chance to rise, and I expect that we will see a renaissance in understanding that the infrastructure, not just physical, but also conceptual infrastructure, needs to be built in an innovative way, and that becomes an investment for future generations that this generation will do once we finish the handoff, which will be done in about 25 years. So those are the 7 drivers I think all conspire to make the next 25 years the Great Progression. Thank you.